In theaters now is the indie suspense, I believe that's how it was listed on the theater website, indie suspense film The Ruse, starring Angela Cartwright, who you may know from Alien, and I believe Witches of Eastwick, and I believe Invasion of the Body Snatchers 78, and I believe original Invasion of the Body Snatchers. You'd recognize her. She's the most recognizable, maybe only recognizable person in this film. And set in Maine, rural Maine, it is as aforementioned suspenser. Basic story goes a little something, I'm not going to tell you the whole story, a little something like this. Elderly woman, Angela Cartwright, with dementia, bedridden, lives in rural Maine. Very lovely house, very lovely view. Former superstar orchestra conductor and composer. Her nurse aide disappears one night, and her replacement is sent to the house amidst the mystery of where did the previous aide go. She just disappeared one night, and whispers about maybe that house is haunted, and the elderly woman saying she sees her husband, and her husband talks to her, and her husband wants her to join him in the beyond. And is the house haunted? Is something nefarious going on? Is the old woman suffering from dementia? Is she really seeing ghosts? What's going on? Who will survive, and what will be left of them? So what we have basically is a very low-key, I don't want to call it slow moving because I was never bored, but it's a very leisurely paced, slow burn suspenser, let's say. I wouldn't necessarily call it a thriller. I wouldn't necessarily call it a horror movie, though it does have those elements. It is, it's mostly like a human drama with occasional flits of, something strange going on, and a plenty of if not red, perhaps pink herrings that may or may not be behind what's going on. Maybe it's supernatural, maybe it's not. I'm not really going to tell you. So my main issue with the film is that it's a low budget film, and I got to say, it's exciting to be able to go and see these in a theater. Everything is better in a theater, and the upside of having these theaters that I have access to that are 16, 20, 25 screens is that for the most part, every screen isn't taken up with a blockbuster. Something big comes out and they'll have 50 showtimes a day on every format you can think of, but most of the time there still is room for these indie films. I hadn't even heard of the releasing company, and for years I would bemoan the fact that the days of the small releasing company were over, and all you could see were big studio films in the theater, or the major independent companies in the theater, many of whom were owned by the big studios. And it seems like the pendulum is swinging back again, where theaters need a lot of content. And I think it probably started during the pandemic, where theaters weren't getting any new content from the theaters, so they were putting these things that would have otherwise gone straight to streaming in indie films and films that were maybe a year or two old out. So it was nice to be able to see this in a theater. Ultimately, I didn't think it was that great because it has this very slow build and this very slow dropping of hints, and maybe somebody isn't what they seem, and maybe they are, and maybe somebody else isn't telling the truth, and all this other stuff. And it kind of goes along at a pace, and then everything happens at once. Then suddenly it gets really exciting, and something happens, and something crazy happens, and something else crazy happens, and this is in the span of a few minutes. And then it all kind of wraps up, and you think you know what happened, and then it's like the end of Psycho, but for like 10 minutes, where the police detective who's been, involved in the film here and there, sits down and explains this incredibly complicated thing with flashbacks showing you how it happened as to what really went on in the film. And I guess in some way I'm giving away that maybe it is or isn't supernatural. There's a big explanation toward the end of the film, and it just gets ridiculous. It's like all of the inactivity, all of the slow pace that happened. And again, I don't really mean that in a bad way. All of the slow pace that went through the movie up until like the last 10 minutes is made up for with like 35 minutes worth of activity crammed into 10. An incredible amount of exposition at the end of the film. An incredible amount of things happening that are kind of ridiculous at the end of the film. I mean, things happen throughout that are kind of ridiculous, where somebody calls the police to come to the house because they want to talk to the police, and then something kind of develops between when that call is made and when the police show up, so that the police show up at the house by basically kicking in the door and pulling a gun. And I'm like, why would they be doing that if they think they're just going to the house to talk to somebody? So some of it's a little ham-fisted. Some of the acting is not great. Some of the line deliveries are not great. Some of the dialogue is not great. But most of this film was a one-man band, one director. It was like writer, producer, director, editor, composer. So clearly a small film. The main leads are fine. The main leads, the nurse, the patient, and the nice guy neighbor next door, are all really pretty solid. It's just some of the supporting cast are I'm guessing maybe not as experienced. And I'm sure this was a labor of love for a lot of people. There's a lot of Maine, I want to say Holden, I could be wrong, I just saw it in the theater, but my memory's not great. I think it was really shot all in one location in Maine, and there's a lot of people in the credits that are thanked in Maine and some New York. So obviously kudos for getting this film into theaters. I think there will be a lot of people who are totally fine with this movie if they take a chance on it. The downside of the way indie films are at multiplexes now is that you almost never see any advertising for these things. You see the same trailers endlessly. I always say it's like 5 trailers for generally major films in front of every movie you go see until one of those movies comes out, and then they put a new trailer into that mix. And it's punishing. It makes you not want to see these films. And it's a bummer when every week between 3 and 6 of these indie films open locally and you've never heard of them. And I think most people, I went into this totally blind, because I have the AMC A-list, as I always will remind you, and I have time to kill. I want to get in out of the sun. And I love taking a chance on a film and not knowing where it's going to go. I knew zero about this film other than the title and the fact that it was suspense. So I was along for the ride. But most people kind of want to have a clue of what they're getting and seeing. And they don't always have to have huge actors in the movie to make you want to see it. It just needs to look compelling. But when they've never seen a trailer in the theater, and when they've never seen a poster or anything until it shows up on the website or the app for the theater the day it opens or the day before, it's just like, well, good luck getting anybody to go see that. So anyway, you might enjoy this more than I did. I was fine with it up until the end, where it really got kind of silly. I was willing to, it's an indie film, it's a small production. I was willing to overlook a lot of the minor acting and dialogue issues and things, but it just gets kind of silly at the end. It got kind of crammed. Like, I saw another film where I said the same thing. It's almost like it was supposed to be a 2.5 hour movie or a 2 hour movie, but somebody said at the 80-minute mark, okay, you got to wrap this up. I know that's not what happened, but it just kind of feels like that because it is so dense and rushed toward the end. At any rate, in theaters now, streaming forevermore after that is The Ruse.